No.
So this would be my first official video, and you might be wondering, how did I find out I have 22 duplication? I found out when I was pregnant with my daughter Abigail, and the reason I found out was because anytime I would go to the doctor and have ultrasounds done, they would always say, oh, there might be something wrong because her jaw is very small and she had a growth restriction in the womb. And so I started to see different specialists at different hospitals. And one of the big hospitals I went to, which is worldwide known, was Children's National in DC. And I went there for an MRI, a fetal MRI, and an EKG, and a very detailed ultrasound, and also for further blood tests to see if maybe I could be a carrier of some kind of syndrome, and that could give the doctors answers as to what Abigail might have. So after I got my blood test results, a genetic doctor came and talked to me, and she was the one who let me know that I did have a syndrome called 22Q duplication, which is one of the most popular syndromes behind Down syndrome. And at that point, I had never heard of that syndrome. And so I started to do a lot of research, and I would ask her questions like, what are some of the physical features of the syndrome? Like, how do people know they have it? How do they find out? And she informed me that a lot of people find out because they start having issues related to the syndrome, whether it's like hearing loss or droopy eyelids, or a lot of times some women find out just like I did because their baby starts to have difficulties or show signs of some kind of syndrome, and then they get tested and they show positive for the 22Q duplication. And the other question you might ask is, how did I react when I found out? I didn't really have much of a reaction because I've always thought maybe I had some kind of syndrome due to my physical features like droopy eyelids, a small jaw, ear pits, which is one of the most common physical features of the syndrome, is ear pits, droopy eyelids, and macronathia, which is the small jaw. And so it didn't really hit me hard. It was just more of, let me do research and see how it can affect Abigail, because obviously it's going to affect everybody differently, because there's a mild to severe spectrum within any syndrome. So for me, it was more my physical features, not really intellectually. And so after I left that appointment, I informed my parents about the test results, and I asked them if they knew or if they've ever had any kind of doubts about me having any syndrome. And so at that point, I told my dad first, because he was the one who picked me up from the appointment, and he didn't really have much of a reaction. I asked him and he said no, and then that's it. He didn't really want to talk much about it. So I don't know if it was hard for him to know that, or maybe he knew and he just, never really wanted me to feel any different from any other kids. And then I obviously told my mom, and she said she didn't know, and at that point she started to do some research on it because she had never heard of the syndrome herself. And obviously after, when I got back home, I told my husband about it, and he said he would never have guessed, because I don't have any physical disabilities per se, other than my hearing loss, and I don't have any intellectual disabilities. So a lot of times people don't know, and that's the thing with the syndrome. A lot of people don't know until they get tested for it. And I think the one thing I would say about finding out is, if you think you might have something wrong, there's nothing bad with getting tested for it, because if you were to get pregnant, you can have an idea of what can be wrong with your child. And just because I have it doesn't always mean my child's gonna have it. Like, I have a son, and he's about to be 2 years old, and he doesn't have it. He doesn't have any kind of syndrome. So there's always a 50% chance any of your kids will have it or not have it. So if you're trying to get pregnant, ladies, just try, and that's where I'm at with it now.